Inside Story Uganda, real source of political updates. Inside Story Uganda.
Abantu bano nti Bobi Wine yagamba ti omusanga agukwasiza abantu. Omanyi nti omusanga abantu bakusaze. Do you know why? Nabaga nti politics wa Uganda tebamalaako. Toyinza gamba musajja muddugavu nti kato wange wasasi wange. Okuva ababaka ba Nuupule balayidde. Bakakasiza nti Bobi Wine ye yawangulwa. Boba wangula kuba toyinza ganti a system nabagambye ababege nebaga nti you examine
system yemu
examine where you have a good candidate wins except a wave ngeyo mu Buganda was a wave abantu banyivu ku government abaganda fe tuli mu informal sector teri muntu wakabiranda lego basobola kuwa bwa advisor natali nyayo for 8 years have never entered that office and I will never enter it, and it will be expunged from my records because it was intended to put me under to mwebaze to humiliate me. Siri nyayo ero yo mukuru agambi musigari yagala senti yaligeze mu new nolinjo kwa akasajja konkaso omuntu
kakati si
50 million in new it is integrity ne future yange kategera mugenda kugwa
kakati siyinza kugamba nti no ku president banzi baba bakabuka
ate how the system yemu minzani webba ebba buli agula the moment you fail to understand nti Museveni wa man nze mathematics nalisokola mathematics nengeri abana bakola mathematics oba busobeseza mu afuta n'olubago you must realize nti timu za wanozo na kofi yaberako ey'amaanyi Ruhito jo vira neberako ey'amaanyi nkugambi Margaret Thatcher yafugako bungeze emyaka 16 ane babubinyo ate gundi Chancellor Helmut Kohl eyagatta Germany unification yafuga 16 years Christian Democrats tebakyaliye Germany ekibina kyafa obate bamutendanga bwosoma political science mulimu professor bamwita professor Kinjwa simanyi Kinyero described Obote as a man who is an expert on laying traps for his enemies and avoid them. Obote agana naino bukodi ba mutwala lyo mubutu ngaduka ngakaweddemu. A person can dominate politics for some time.
Kati kitegeeza abantu abali bagamba FDC waliwo omanyi mu 2016 waliwo aba FDC abalina endowooza nti nno ne mu parliament tugenda tuleme kuba leader of opposition
Egana bwe baba wangula bagamba
ekitegeeza bali batuufu
obukiiko bwa parliament tubugenda until we pronounce the court pronounces baga now that court has pronounced tugende kakati nkugamba uluchi yata yajjanga mwe ya mulese ngati bagala extension ya mwe tebagala extension ya mwe timwe lose them by proxy nemwe yali amanyi politics we Kenya omuchukuyu talonda atali muchukuyu era ye yali amanyi nti uhuru bwe yesimbawo navuganya ne Raila Odinga agenda mukuba abachukuyu bagenda kuwagirani ne badira kibaki ne bamuteka akabenje kibaki banonya akalunga taliwo Raila mugezi nnyo wano taliwo Raila musajja mugezi mu politics wa Kenya yategeera nti bwe nesimba ne uhuru wankuba what did he do yagamba nti Kibaki tosha bakyewunya yategeera nti let us Moyo has created a puzzle for us. He wants to yabaga nti yawala na abachukuyu na banka zaabwe nga tabaagala naye bwe yali agenda nakolanga bana abavubuka njokubako mu mwaso omutwe mwe kunsimuka buli ne muggulu tetulikolagana kakati nkugamba nti mwe yali mugezi yaleta Uhuru Kenyatta ne bamugaana but they voted who Kibaki gwe yali naye vice president we could not put him in prison kakati era Raila teyamuwa kuba yali amusibye ebbanga ddene kakati nekijja what happened Uhuru bwaddayo nasula obwa chairman bwa Kanu yawangula naddamu nawangula no under the news of ICC politics tumubala nego oba gwe omuntu agenda okufuga eggwanga lino ayina obuyinza kubujja wa Museveni. You must be more Museveni than Museveni. If you think nti Museveni okujja konga bamwe kubanga Museveni ayina ekintu kimu what I know cabinet agenda kikendeeza obubbi abumalewo abazungu ne banatusiba sente bandoloza tubadde tufuna mu sente z'abazungu sente z'abazungu ziyita mu non-government organizations bazigula mu mayumba where you see a government that has failed to deliver, it is reflected in the MPs in the country's parliament. Olwokuba abantu babamanyi ti non-government organizations zibayimirizaawo bebalonda mu parliament. Mu Uganda sente babba za TV na radio za Museveni. Mu Uganda sente babba za COVID za Museveni. Mu Uganda babba sente za nzige za Museveni. Tebabba azebweru bazibadda. Kati what Museveni has to do is to ensure nti ekikumi kye tebakibba. We can do without bazunguzi money. As long as ngabo mutule wakane mukazi ono oganga kakati nganze I'm jobless. Sina mulimo for 8 years. I sit down with my family. Sina mulimo. I refuse to go there. Siri nyayo. Yaddo kulingiza yo bulingiza. I never entered that office in my life. And that appointment natabuti butanyeza Museveni I respect him. It would have been by now expunged from my records. Techiribeerawo once wonna tinatwali wakwe watu mwebaza ni ku mutwe tumabaze yanjoze atudende nakalima nenda lweso nti atengene mu presence office nga yaliyo hatya nti kana kasajja kankubye mawuli ko nakanyenoonye mulalwa yisenyina mbagende mu nolinjo ko kubentu enjasi
kakati nopu kye yandikoze ki kyogamba teyandira idolwalero ababaka bayo yandibaganye temugenda mu parliament
kati bakiriza. They have recognized you cannot deny that one of the twins is not yours. Chovola banti abazungu bagezi. Abazungu tebavuddeyo kutusibako nati tyakalubaka ba. Abazungu bakuvunana kimu undermining democracy. Era nabagamba one. Within 30 days or 90 days your children will come back because a travel ban means your money in America is frozen, your assets are frozen, you cannot do business and your family is deported. Tebali wa wana abogera sabagante mujja kulaba abogera America ku streets za Kampala they are here. We bali bazze
kati singa nokutegenze kulaiza ababaka ba parliament kyandiyongedde kochi kyandikyusiza ki
they cannot. It's very attractive. Nkugambi. The only person who can reject a job in Uganda is me.
Assuming nga bakikoze kyandibongedde kochi.
Yes,
kyandikosezza
ne mukinana kyagana. Why? You are not committed. Mwagala ye kati oyo Segirinya yazze. Why? Nabagandi Segirinya government ziyinza mukiza kuvaamu. Why? Any opening wa Bobi Wine chance to come and join the parliament and control his party in the parliament. Erono muganda waliwo muganda wa Bobi Wine yayitamu goloza bote babala Segirinya nebo munakola muti ajja kulemerayo because they don't want any opening in the Kampala to enable Bobi Wine to join to lead his party. We are going to have a situation over Kenya where every election brings another party. Do it in Democratic Party nani kakati Bobi Wine nabiyuzamu kakati ate sinupu yurikati nupu ate bajiwambi abena ali mubeba nanyini muri mwapi kama center muri mwapi kama nze chembe bunyako
kati mukalu
tefetu wakolere kubwerere kati abanupi beba wa descent baba wadde
mukalu afa
fetu kolere bwerere omanyimu ndabagamba ndi Museveni alinga baby tetunuli ya mulezi wale kitegedde ekyo ndi baby tetunuli ya mulezi
alunolirani
asekera bali eri abatamukutte ina ali mu bwiri ne Museveni bwali if we want to suffer poverty support Museveni bakusasira bebajja ne bafugendeni bamanje ne bafugendeni banne bafugendeni these good cadres who have been sustaining him tabawa azikiza muliro era yero sijenkoze ati kitange yakingamba nti yali musematalo wokubiri nabeera musajja mukumbi nnyo nga yadumira parade buli kaseera bakamanda babuuzanga nti muleefu yiko wapi nanga tukikolanga mu life fe abali committed ku Museveni tulina twenoonyeza sente zaffe eyo emmotoka ngiteekamu amafuta kyovula bewange tubyogererayo nti simanyi bya government. I have not tested ebya government privileges of government when I can fuel buy fuel for my car.
Naye wabitestingako ku myaka 13
eri mu byaliruddawa
myaka 13 ngo
bujozi bwokka. I wanted to study naba studying and nembategeera kyovula mbawuttudde nembawuttula. I knew them singa obulya mwenda byayogera tebatwalanga balusula mukukubire wano ng'agamba nti ababasajja tewali gwe basiima ani gwe basiima Kadaga ng'abakoledde. Kadaga yalwana ne parliament n'abayisizaamu era Museveni si yakuba Kadaga uno omwana yakuba Kadaga ayagala mbu olanya simanyi olanya ajje mu parliament simanyi bakyusa amateeka ng'okoma ku myaka 85 simanyi bakoleki ndaba olanya yeereega olanya ne yeereega nze sisobola kutwalibwa kuzanya kagologoosi ate ne Kadaga naye mmulabula. Kadaga bwakkiriza ekifo kyonna nja mukuba ne gomesi njikube agende bwe yeebaka ngaffe bwe twebaka bakunamye abamulise you go back home.
Owa speaker nga Buganda ate nga mubaka wa parliament abantu
anti ojjayo mirundi ena kutuula muno ogenda ennaku nnya nomala omwezi tolinyeeyo naye nga tebakunidde ku mutwe nakunyaalako kasaba kujooga omukazi kasakkiriza ne bamujja mu kisenge mu bedroom nadda mu ddiro is a visitor.
Ebyo bibyo anti gwe wagambye ebyo bibyo wekka wagambye gwobisobola anti wagambye gwobisobola wekka
obadde mukabadde speaker ng'oyina gwewekolyako zinobwa vice wa Uganda sibukola bululi wa president mbuli wa vice wa Uganda kyayina njogebe nakolema njogebe kundu nebo obumpa sibukola wa vice wa Uganda okujogebwa bana abaseta
usaka kakati jagala kubuuza ogambye buli kalulu kajja kuleeta ekibiina ekipya kati akalulu akaddako tuyiza okufuna ekibiina pate empya
nupo abagagabe nali mubaji wambi
kati
ate bwe batamanyize ngenda nembabuulira nembwe mbatunuulira tewali yasoma political science and they are very arrogant and they don't look for akamwenda kabagambye nti UPC aliwo nani kaina knowledge ne professor ina knowledge ne kutesa but the rest very arrogant fellows bajoka bujozi bantu kubali kumitu kubanyalako kubanga what does it mean boyofu yira perfume nga tona abatowunya. The issue is to solve service delivery. Abantu abaganda bwe bamala okuddukako n'abasoga ne bakuddukako kyabazinga bamulabyeko. It's dangerous. Politically it is dangerous. When the baganda gandi basoga go ne bava mu government abaganda tebayina kye bakubanja. Abaganda bagala kubajira mukazi ono abawulira mu muwino. Abaganda bagala bagobera namugwanya. Abaganda bagala kugamba Katumba wamala ave ku boda boda. Olaba ne Katumba yawunye ne Katumba yawunye bamunyisiza. If you want to provide a permanent solution on boda boda, stop them where they are coming. Ogambe twagala basi tugenda kusema mafuta boda boda tuwaba wajireta netoyeza kugamba nti ba importers bazireta mubaliyeko revenue nosanga boda boda ngeriko PSV boda boda tibajikulyanga kukutambuza pasi ne muziyiga omanye nti ezo Katumba wamala bamukaba kati naye yawunye niye munawunye komawa nze nina byengana ninga nchonchikani ngeze wange kwebaka munawunye komawa kati eyo mwana wa boda boda akaba Katumba abana bafa akaba Katumba ndenna mukwenye babikola bali basete
okunyisa boda boda zibadde ki
bakwata nkwate
anti zibadde ki bazikwatira ki
bembo ko ne baba no. If you want to solve a boda problem kati makamba buli
problem ya boda ki kyekibuuzo ngamba gwe bakubali abalala gwe kululwo problem ya boda ki
is not a means of transport tewali na muntu wakwata boda tekolibwanga ko kutambuza musabaze ya kulya masali buno butukutuku bwe butambuza abasabaze boda bakugamba tibwe amateeka agajifuga ino kubera ko netale emisana bajirabe what trailer is motorized agonde si muntu atambula sekagale omukazi alinya boda ino kubera mu jindi nga jituddeko kisajja why ono atuteka ekikazi bwe yenyenja nagira bwati abona yateko omutwe ate ono tayimirira. So a border means a problem in your economy. Don't blame these people. UTC mwagisanga bone mujibba abawutada ne bali gwera baba Japan kye bakoze zino zikamunyo kyaziraba bali segundi muzita drone twasoka kubitya ndisimeti bigenda mu mfuvu tebikola kite nekati obisanga nga bidominate nsi zite zikyajja bazi dibya tizikyajja. So if you want to solve a problem, solve it where it comes from. You can even organize a project from border to the market. Nga buli mwana mu traininze afe ku border you can even offer. Ndi border banje kuwa mu sente ngola ka mushara. Border nozi kunganya nozi woguma. Nebaga nazo tax.
Goloza abazina tebazaagala.
Anti nkugambye nti if you bring a project oloza bana bagala kutambula ekiriba basekula emitu
anti kyembuuza
you give them
waliwo ina anti omuntu yakwata sente n'agula boda nga kyayagala kati omuwa sente kyate gye yagula miliyoni 5 ogenda muwamu 2 anti
mugenda kusima amafuta sente ze baba bakompetitivu. I can bring a project nengamba aba tax abo nenfuna ekibanda kyange nembaga nti emotoka zonna omanye emotoka ezalimira mu garage gwe nga bagenze mu covid omanye motoka ezalimirayo ng'emipiira gibabuze okuteekamu emito kubabuze. Get them, buy them and donate them to Wuguma bakolemu emitayimbo
anti yo yagiremeddwa ojja kugulayo yagiremeddwa
project Museveni bajja mu bakiwenze muguli emotoka nozimalewo naye bana bawo ultimatums
ogula motoka kiza taxi
kadezo nanzi nonya jeziri nezigula neziwa Wuguma bagondi eyo yisu yakamunye negwa. I was invited to Kenya okutesha kukamunye 14 seaters ziri yo bazibba wana nebazwa gule spirit nino mukubanya asusu mukabususu sinebane babibane nebasindi ko mukazi mu wino nayo kulya mbasajja nasa nenze nebunya kazi nali mu bye ndese oyo mukazi nali mu bye ya daina ngu ana abikwati mwene baga netta baba police ababibe bamukolisa oyo mukazi kayongo tebamwagala ye Museveni yafuna kyenda ku 10 gwali mufumbo gwe tebamu obukadde 5 oyo milioni 5 naganti bamubyeko 2 naye nayo abuliramu nemukubanga bano bwemba koze
naye ekyo ogamba nti yote weteri problem
nkugambye tewali watali problem mu Uganda toyita ganti Kayongo tebamwagala. Why don't they rebel against Kayongo? They are incited. Namukwanya ne yekukuma buli mubbiye naba muleeta mu Kampala. Incite the population. Is not me kuba katambi owulire that they want to shoot me. Shooting me how? Namu bajja but you have discredited Museveni's government. You have made this government unpopular. It's only because Museveni enjoyed overwhelming support. Nobody yali bufunye. No wambe nyanya enoni no jitwala. No wambe nyama mbu bajiteka mu Faludoni akasete kwa bukedde dentwe yako. Faludoni omuvubi ateka omusajja asobola kuteka Faludoni mu nyama ngeruzinga kilo. Nalesa katabo kange kano. Katabo kana kawandika dda. Nakabandika bujja kasoma nekyenjagala mukimu nti abakulembeze basuulibwa batya obuyinza bubayita butya mu ngalo nkugamba
leta tugira tukasoma nga bwe muyita ono
kakati nkugamba katukoze kano tuandikira wano nawalika ku Besigye.
Who to blame? Is it the market? Is it the market master or the madman? Naye ekifaananyi kino kyebakozesa ku ddiba kimpoomedde. How he survives where others failed. How new tactics have been sustained. Okay. It's 10 a.m. Saturday, March 31st, 2012. How he survives. How he survives. Okay. How he survives where others failed. Dr. Besigye has taken full advantage of the following circumstances. Number 1. The emergence of a stealing group in government. Besigye emerged after the 1996 elections. The polls portrayed that the NRM government was not as strong as earlier anticipated. The challenge posed by Dr. Paul Kawanga Semogerere as a presidential candidate had sent shivers down the spines of the emerging SG stealing group in brackets Kakundi. But the Kakundi overlooked the following factors. 1. NRM did not undermine or destroy the old order completely. In Ghana, for example, when Lieutenant Jerry Rawlings took over power, the new leadership overhauled the entire old system, rounding up all former leaders and thieves to be executed. In Uganda, Museveni initiated an all-embracing government, inclusive of members of all the regime. He also accommodated former members of the fighting groups like UFM, FEDEM, and UNLA. These ones still harbored hostility against the government. Number 2, at its assumption of power, the NRM faced a number of counter-insurgency groups sponsored by neighboring countries that feared the NRM revolution to engulf them. In Kenya, for example, the Moi regime was facing several rebel groups such as Mwa Kenya. In order to deny his political opponents the opportunity to regroup and form a new political party, President Moi in 1983 declared Kenya a single-party state. In other words, Kenya was also facing similar challenges. The NRM was accusing Obote. This explains our earlier frosted relations with Nairobi. On many occasions, war drums sounded on both sides of the border. However, this is history today. Kenya used clumsy excuses to close the border with Uganda, knowing very well the economic impact it would cause to Kampala. Denying Uganda access to basic commodities would trigger an uprising. The scenario that the NRM revolution could spark off a related rebellion in Kenya had forced President Daniel Arap Moi to chair the botched peace talks between the Okello's junta and the NRM. The talks degenerated into peace jokes and the NRM stormed Kampala to take over power. In Sudan, the Khartoum government was also aware that the SPLA stood to gain from the changes in Uganda. The new Ugandan government under Yoweri Kaguta Museveni was not hiding its commitment to the total liberation of Africans, including those of South Sudan. In fact, the Obote government had already established the links with the SPLA for the strategic reasons to curtail a possible scenario of Khartoum rearming remnants of Amin soldiers who had fled to the southern Sudan to prepare a counterattack for recapturing power. Indeed, some of the arms Bazirio Olalo Okero used in his push against Obote in 1985 were originally destined to SPLA from the Obote government. Rwanda and Mobutu's Zaire were also sitting on a time bomb. To win friendship with the new administration in Kampala, the late Habyarimana opened up links with the rebels in Luwero. Rwanda became the supplier of essential commodities and also provided the entrance points to the liberated areas under NRM leadership, especially during their interim government under Haji Moses Chigongo in Masaka. Habyarimana was also facing an internal rebellion from the moderate Hutus who had been isolated from mainstream politics under his single-party system. Many prominent Hutu army officers had been arrested and detained in Ruhengeri, dreaded prison, in a similar fashion as many Kenyan political dissidents were languishing in Kamiti prison. People like Rizinda Alexi Kanyarengwe had been imprisoned but gained their freedom when RPA rebels stormed the prison. In 1983, realizing that the NRA rebels were recruiting Banyarwanda refugees, the UPC government decided to extradite them to Rwanda. The exercise, spearheaded by Dr. Edward Rubaihayo, was conducted in a ruthless manner. Prominent Ugandans of Rwanda's stock were targeted. The wife of the then Speaker of Parliament, Mrs. Butagira, was mesmerized to find her name on the list of Banyarwanda for extradition. Retired Anglican Archbishop Sabiti was also targeted. The UPC youth wingers took advantage of the exercise to grab people's bibanja, properties and livestock. Many innocent people were victims. However, the Habyarimana regime did not condemn these actions made at its citizens in a neighboring country or ask donor nations like France to exert pressure on Obote. And this was a grave miscalculation by Kigali. I think he wrongly believed that Obote's strategy would crush the NRA rebellion in Uganda. Furthermore, Kigali subjected the victims of the UPC exercise to a Kinyarwanda language proficiency test before they would be allowed into Rwanda. The purpose was to deny some permission to return to their country. Many indeed failed the test, having stayed for too long out of touch with their Kinyarwanda cultural practices. They established a camp at Sofia town near Kagitumba at the Ugandan side of the common border. Without a viable alternative, many victims of this exercise enrolled for rebel ranks. In his reaction to criticism, Obote retorted that having accommodated them for over 30 years, was it a crime to politely ask them return to their country? This encouraged his UPC henchmen to inflict more damage to the alleged Banyarwanda and their properties. Secondly, when the NRM took power, the question of Rwandan refugees cropped up. The opponents of NRM insisted that non-Ugandans would not be accepted into the army. This attracted attention from the public. It should also be noted that the new government created trouble for these Banyarwanda by entrusting them with big posts and responsibilities in a post-war government after the Luwero War. At one time, Major General Fred Rwigema became Deputy Army Commander and later a minister in the defense portfolio. Dr. Bayingana became the head of medical services. Paul Kagame, head of military intelligence based at Basima. General Kayumba and Bunyenyezi were all active in the northern Uganda against the insurgency. When the NRA introduced military ranks, the ceremony was presided over by Habyarimana himself. He also visited Luwero Triangle, and as a sign of misfortune, his car broke down while coming back to Kampala. Habyarimana donated 3,000 horses to Uganda in the new government's effort to modernize agriculture. Among the high-ranking senior arm officers to receive him was none other than Fred Rwigema, who took center stage at Entebbe International Airport. In his speech, Habyarimana compared Rwanda to a glass full of water that cannot accommodate more liquid. He advised Rwandan refugees in friendly countries like Uganda not to abuse the hospitality of their hosts because returning to Rwanda was completely out of the options under considerations. Habyarimana rejected the idea of recognizing Rwandan refugees as citizens of Rwanda and issuing them passports as they were demanding. As I pointed out, the Rwanda refugee problem had become a hot issue both in NRC and the national media. The real intention was to weaken the NRA in its fight against the rebel groups in the north. Attempts to form a rebel group in Buganda were also made by remnants of a 1950 outfit called Kirimuto. Translated in good Luganda means that it is only the pregnant woman who knows the responsible man. Others first see it. 2. Old political order. The 1989 elections that expanded the NRC had helped the members of the old political parties DP and UPC to dominate the district elected councils, including Kampala district. This prompted an arrogant attitude from the DP leaders that they were capturing NRM. Museveni had also dominated his first cabinet with DP leaders. The first NRM government was dominated by DP politicians. Dr. Semogere, who had earlier joined Lutwa's government, became Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs. He had served as Lutwa's Minister of Internal Affairs under Paul Mwanga, who in 1980 issued a proclamation number 10 that stopped any other institution, including the Electoral Commission, to announce the 1980 results. Mwanga usurped the powers of the Electoral Commission, and it was his office which announced the results, not the Electoral Commission mandated under the law. Contravening Mwanga's proclamation would attract a fine of 10 million shillings or 6 months in jail or both. I vividly remember that fearing to face those punitive measures, Mono newspaper where I worked had gone to bed with a DP victory story, but hurriedly burnt all the copies before taking them to the streets. Even outspoken prelate of the Catholic Church, who was among the first registered voters to cast a vote, Cardinal Emmanuel Nsubuga, did not make any comment about the election results. Back to the DP ministers Museveni appointed, they included Mrs. Victoria Sekitoliko and Robert Kitaliko, both in agriculture, John Sebana Chizito, Gerard Sendaula, Everest Nyanzi, Ponsiano Mulema, Dr. Semogere's young brother, John Batume Kawanga, Kafumbe Mukasa, and many others. Therefore, it took time for ordinary people to know whether it was a DP government or an NRM government. The NRM strategy was to gain legitimacy and acceptance by using the DP leadership in the short run, as it trained its own cadres to establish a stronger political base. Yes, this was achieved, but by 1996, DP structures were still strong. Secondly, this history of DP shows that its official branches are the Catholic Church parishes. This is how Obote failed to undermine it. In 1969, Obote banned DP and declared a single-party dictatorship. However, in 1980, the Bandi party bounced back stronger and more vigorous than when it was officially banned in 1969. In the early 60s, when Mengo tried to undermine DP, the leader of the Catholic Church, Archbishop Joseph Chiwanuka, came out and reduced the battle between him and Kabaka Mutesa too. This explains why the Catholic Church took Kabaka Mutesa too. The 1989 legislative elections were based on the county level. In Buganda, counties used to be big political units. Buganda Kingdom had only 20 big counties. Take, for example, Bukoto County, which was later curved into 6 constituencies. However, in 1989, it was represented by one person. Such a big area required huge financial resources and a well-known personality or one with an organization network like religion or party. Thus, the new political order had revived the Kabaka Yeka sentiments when the NRM government was forced to recognize Kabaka Mutebi as the new king. Since the NRM had no clear position on the future of the abolished Buganda Kingdom, it lost the leading role. The Kabaka Yeka remnants took over. They mobilized the people against the government, and the NRM leaders lost the leading role and became reactive to demands. Sensing that the NRM had lost the control, Kabaka Mutebi relied on the Kabaka Yeka remnants to exert pressure on the government to make concessions to Mengo. Mutebi revived the Buganda Luchiko, which took advantage of the poor approach by government on Buganda issues to discredit Museveni that he was breaking a commitment on the Bush agreement about federal. The Gulibo Baganda were incited against Museveni that he was reneging on his war pledge to grant Buganda federal. With their Kamalio Kanoka paragraph in Doza. With their usual intimidating skills, the KY Ruminants created a big anti-Museveni bloc in Buganda, where he lacked a strong team to counter this YK group. It is therefore not surprising that the Buganda Luchiko, which under the constitution is only a cultural institution with no political and judicial powers, has taken a leading role in all subsequent elections. During 1996 elections, the Luchiko passed a resolution declaring Dr. Semogere as the sole Buganda candidate. Many Mengo ministers were part of Semogere's campaign intrigue. The then Katikiro Joseph Murwanyamuli Semogere declared that a mother goat cleans its newly born with its tongue, meaning that Buganda should vote their own. Catholic priests used the podium to campaign for Dr. Semogere. The Kabaka Yeka Ruminants came up with their slogan of Sirwajo Quota, referring to Museveni as a foreigner in Buganda.
Echimpandisa obutabu bwange obwo likodisi nti yesu nti ebyobufuzi bigenda nebidda nti abakulembeze ebiseera ebisinga obungi gavumenti zaabwe bazisuula mu byokuzannya. Habyarimana yagaana abanyarwanda okudda ewaabwe n'abagamba nti n'ezzike erimu eriri mu Akagera National Park lisinga abanyarwanda 10 abaddayo. Abasajja ne bamugamba nti owaaye tuli cognizing otuwe passport nti apaana ani abawa passport mu. Kakati mbagamba bulijjo nti Habyarimana najja akola ensobi n'akwata miliyoni za $2 n'aziwa omukuba jeno ba Uganda batemule Rwejema ne badduka mu South ne bamobilizingira mu Northern Uganda gye baava ne balumba Rwanda. Atoka kananga Habyarimana wali just a small mistake. These people initially the Banyarwanda didn't want to go back. Nega Habyarimana yakiriza okuteesa nabo ensonga ey'okudda ewaabwe yafuuka namba 10 bamukolera 10 points program. Agandi akuddayo si kyekizibu liko konesha bwavu obuli e Rwanda. Moi mu 83 yakyusa constitution ya Kenya nefuuka ya kibiina kimu ng'alowooza nti bonna ajja banyigira mu kibiina omwo. Beyamakadi baakiyiwa. Beyamakadi simple matter. Beyamakadi wena nabafugiramu kati nembalaga nti police wa Uganda Buganda ezekyusa kandi mu 8 yali ya DP ena ali mu bwe yajja ne council yaayo National Reserve Council yava nayo mu nsiko bwe bateekawo okulonda mu 89 DP yawamba ekikoza district zonna kuba gye baali bamanyiwozi the most outstanding party at that time. Bwe tutwaddamu 2-1 ena ali mu nejja kakati kababa tutte Buganda bagitutte. Why is Buganda contentious? Buganda is contentious because many leaders make a mistake. Ne balowooza nti Mengo efuga Abaganda. You police Mengo is like a police get the generals and the sergeant does overthrow you. Abaganda ali bategeera talikwata ku informal sector, tokwata ku taxi, tokwata ku botale, tokwata ku nyanja, tokwata ku lufula n'amagendo gaabwe. Do you think it Abaganda bagala nnyo ebifo mu government? Babifune muki?
Ampulira babikaya.
No, those are failures. A failed Muganda looks for a job in the government.
Pulira babikaya nti babawadde kimala.
Kirumira omwobwa minister.
Abo balala ate.
Yakinkubulira Mirundi omwobwa minister. Mirundi agala obwa minister.
Waliwo kirasa ebyagala.
Mirundi agala obwa minister. I want my freedom. Kubanchi manyi nti wa minister ja kujja defending ebintu gababye sente balala. Muganda a failed Muganda yayagala obwa minister yayagala ebitiibwa. A successful Muganda yagala kwekolera bibye. Igwe tokwata ku informal sector. Bolozo obata ku lutalo yalumaze emyaka 5. Nemanyi obutalo bwali wano. Ewaluka echa wano paka empya. Wali kugundi kugaza tewali wakatale wani wachirumira tunudde mupaka tewali wakatale ku California nkadde tewali wakatale obutale bwali mu Uganda nga abantu bakola sawa mukaga ne banyuka nete muyinza kulumba buli bomu wonna ne mulumba takisi ne mulumba bugundi ne mulumba obutale ne mulumba kibona nabonna n'omusenyu gw'omulwera abaana basombanga omusenyu nawo ne mugabbanga muyisemba China ne bateekawo omuceere ettaka ne muba evikitinga Museveni yesebadde mwagalanya muteringi akatambi kalibwa
akatambi kubakandaze wannaye
kibagamba okumbo
kazanyamu walit
bagamba okumbubula banne bambubula ekiro ng'abantu bawuliddeko nti bagenda kumbubula
kakati waliwo wano ekintu kyensomye mu katabo kano katulabe mbadde nkomyewa njagala kuddamu nsoma akantu kano nti contravening Mwanga's proclamation would attract a fine of 10 million shillings or 6 months in jail or both. I vividly remember that fearing to face those punitive measures, Muno newspaper where I worked had gone to bed with a DP victory but hurriedly burned all copies before taking them to the streets. Kakati awe nsomyewo ne njukira ne chimpa ebiseera ebyo amawulire engeri gye gakolangamu n'ensangi zino engeri gye gakolamu really enjawulo eyo abantu abali mu mawulire bagiraba nti weeri
anti abamawulire bammwe tebasoma
oba tebamanyi byafaayo
tebawula kye bayita
basoma
tebawula kye bayita occupation hazards to be gas with the tear gas bakole batya if you go to have a riot bali badde ba veterans abavudde mu maje but we got to pay money wali badde toyina nabo nabaga nti Bobi Wine yo mulaba alabike munyeze walabako ku Bobi Wine nga yesemula tear gas Bobi Wine nabeera n'akasawe mabega ne besi yali akayina nga bantu bakategera mbukali mu mazi bulletproof batambulanga na bulletproof kakati gwe owamawulire you learn where they have riots batukubye emigo muli bamawulire oyina kikamera kinene yuwe mutaddeko simanyi bino bipress ebikofiira Uganda cover irale Gandhi cover parliament waliwo gwe bakubye wano nga akavalinga parliament but your problem is professional hazard nti muli mu bintu ebya modernity naye ng'empapula zammwe ne radio ne TV tezisobola bikola ki n'obutasoma bwammwe okulowooza nti bweyogera nti oli w'amawulire oyina kyofuna hide yourself nze nabaga nebayo soup police nejja I don't identify myself bategeera ono bya gwe naffe twabeeranga mu struggle nga kamera bazijjamu exposers ne bazitwala aba police do they want okuba ebintu byo nayo yina ku kamera gunene gulinga omugugu nti ogenda kukabalinga riot how right yebera smartphone banomba kwata antya how do I catch these people bagin to fit says technology but they cannot believe nti omusajja again nti omusajja njamu kubisasi oba government jensula yasezala wange ya kitaawe naffe tulina mu stake mu gwanga tulina mu stake you can't fight over lwakitula farm eya family but when it comes to insecurity in government I come out kill me they will kill you but I cannot keep mom sisobola mbabulya ne mbagamba nti mmwe bali abasajja abazungu babatunulidde ne mbaga nti lukuhiya tewaliwo nti baleeta biteeso mu parliament bye balowooza nti kata katajja biisa naye si kituufu the strategy is anybody who poses a threat nti ayinza okuvuganya ogwa president bamukuba ne bamugjawo buli omu bajja musekula olanya atajja balemerera obo tebamuleetanga abazanya amuteringiyo naye gwe nolowooza nti ye kadaganya why should not change stop at one level why tell me what has he done what has the Kadaga
naye byobuuza nga ne Kadaga byabuuza oli timu Kadaga
era bwe bagambye ono bwe yagambye ti uyu musajja yayimirizawo Kadaga I know what it means yes nange mwanjoga
oli timu Kadaga
kubanga bano ensobi gye bakola
kubanga nzimpulira
bw'okolera gavumenti eno bakwekyusiza tikatikada kabamuka waisa nsambu mwetano waisa kino is it bad to support government
anti ne Kadaga agume kubanga ne Museveni mu government ye waliwo abatamuwagala abatamuwagira kakali Kadaga naye bwaba ina abatamuwagira si kipya
milioni 2 mbutusimbe mu migongo kuba mu ballot atuwangula
migongo ejachi
ndo mukikole basajja mmwe ejoguli
onoberayo
abasajja bamani akulinda
ate onoberayo oli mulozi olina kalulu
ndiramba buli ne banuwa baliyo banuwa babagamba mu kikiche sibagambye wano nemaganti akaluka kali process chairman we electoral commission yosanga wa chairman we electoral commission who could nominate a man who is barefooted wamusangawo
kakati
where did you find such
Tamale edobozi lino liganya okuzanya ndigezisa oba yalitaddeko ate simanyi yalije ku simu
encha kajja kuzanya jembeera
yalije ku simu
atemba kwa sachi ne musajja agenti ngena mu bobbole sasa chairman namugamba mu bobbole
ndoza teyakachusiza format ndoza
this is my country whether you mbobbola or not. Mirundi is not fighting to come back to government. Mirundi doesn't want a government job. Era manyi nti ate government genereka ate kati CNO and is in a very weak position. So I'm not attracted to come back. I'm just helping you. Oba musaze omukiwe kigenda bakuba. Mu bantu be bakomezaawo abaana be bajje mu America mulimu abange. Zinayo mu yesigadde.
Owota akomewa.
Ate ntia mwindi ninayo sente ninayo ki. Mumubikole
ate naye munna Uganda wagamba bana
oye abayina abali mu kategole bala kakati kakakaza kalinga empiki kali mesa bugwe ni kusula ekiriando ngonga sasud. The ban applies to DPCs, the ban applies to advisors, the ban applies to ministers.
Gosoli advisor
satu tebyange nze munange ekifu kyo bwa advisor ne visa yo mu America efigire kisifo kyamu ngano kutambula mu America and its allies nga muno mfuna mungi emiliyoni emwe n'ekitundu omwezi
kati otambula
kino kinsingira kino
anti kyengamba naye bafika
tepisa ensingira bino bankwatire wano kubanga olwa miliyoni emwe n'ekitundu gye bava ku bwadvisor
tugende mu mawulire ng'oyagala America
America bw'obeera naye mu passport yes bwendwala bwenkola ki bwengenda okulaba omwana nge bwenkola ki kino nkita nte kino I'm telling you I'm a honest man. If I'm confronted with the ban and leaving the advisory role just kola na kola mbere no mu America mu passport ya yes this is the safest country, is the country of opportunities. Tuyinza okufuna ne crisis ne tutingania ku street I just escape. This one is better when I compare the two. A presidential advisory law etaina kerina
naye ng'oli advisor
erimu n'abatainanga
naye ng'oli advisor
kitunulira as a channel of getting money nkafunayo miliyoni mu kitu
ngaba naye nga ku bibiri nga bagambye rondawo kimu olonda kiri
nkugambye ndi walabye bambise n'okumbira ne bangamba the contract by renewing yango later acceptance go
naye kati ate envumbo y'okutambula webe kwata ne ku advisor gw'oli advisor wanyonyedde kiba America ntize mundeke Tamale katugende